All right. Um, cool. I think it's working. Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Positively Atheist coming to you with my first ever, I think, official live stream. So today I'm going to be kind of going into discussions on your questions, your comments, those types of things on my video. If you want to join me live on YouTube, feel free to join using the link that I post in the comments section. I think I could post in the comments section somewhere. The link. Just give me a moment. I'll post it in here. If you want to come on air, have some discussions, please keep everything you say and do appropriate. Yeah. So let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and post a link to the Zoom, and I believe the Zoom has a waiting room enabled. So let me just double check my settings for all this. Enable waiting room. I'm going to disable that, and my profile pictures. And then I'm also going to mute participants upon entry. And yeah, so I'm also going to think I have to figure out how to disable some of the settings on some of this stuff. Enable waiting room, hide profile pictures, allow participants share screen. Nope. And allow participants to start video. Nope. Not share whiteboards, and cannot annotate. Chat is enabled on the Zoom. So if you want to join us on Zoom, you can do that. I will have a waiting room. Let me see here. Cool. Awesome. All right. So sorry about that, everybody. It's my first time doing the Zoom. So I'm going to try to just get it set up here so I can flow pretty easy. So I want to start off by addressing a comment that I got from Joe Sperling as the user. Hopefully I said that correctly. And this comment was on a video called 5 Things Your Pastor, Preacher, Minister, or Other Holy Men Will Not Tell You. Now, this user starts off by saying, actually, it won't matter if I elaborate, is what this user says here. You will claim whatever I say is pure coincidence or happened by chance. Because you don't believe in prayers are answered, you are trained to refute immediately. No, that's actually not true. It's not the fact, it's not a knee-jerk reaction just to say prayers, that your quote unquote prayers are answered are coincidence. As the old saying goes, if it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And the reason why atheists like myself are quick to say coincidence when you talk about a miracle story or an answer to prayer is because it looks identical. What you're pointing to is identical to coincidence, right? If your prayers or miracles could be shown to be effective, okay, or to show to be part of reality on demand, or or a higher chance than coincidence, then we wouldn't call it coincidence. The reason why we call what you refer to as miracles or answers to prayer coincidence is because it looks like coincidence. It sounds like coincidence. It even smells like coincidence. And thereby, it's probably coincidence. Now, that's not to say that what you've experienced isn't real. I'm not going to make that claim here, okay? And I'm not going to say that miracles or any of this kind of stuff is impossible, right? Or answers to prayer. All I can say is that what most people have referred, actually, what everybody who I've ever spoken to regarding claims to miracles or claims to answer prayers, everything I've ever seen or heard from somebody looks just like coincidence. Okay. And that's not to, like I said, I don't want to knock what your experience was, but it looks like it. Okay. And yeah, I am predisposition to call out I guess you guys call them falsehoods or falsities if I see them. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you make a claim and then just nod my head in agreement as if I have no had no ability to be skeptical whatsoever, or that's rude. It's not rude. If you're willing to come out and make a claim, then you have to back that claim up. And this is one of the problems we see when it comes to these claims of miracles and answered prayers, isn't it? Everybody wants to run around and claim that God is doing this or God is doing that, or he's answering prayers or performing miracles. But as soon as anybody with any amount of skepticism asks somebody to actually prove that is the case, this is the typical answer we get. Oh, well, no matter what I tell you, you're going to say it's coincidence. And that's not true at all. I mean, let me give you a quick example. Let's say you're a not just a Christian. Let's say you're a Southern Baptist Christian. Okay, you belong to the Southern Baptist Association of Evangelical Christians. So, like, let's get this as specific as possible. Let's imagine, for the sake of conversation, that Southern Baptist Evangelical Christians, for whatever reason, happen to have tied itself into the divine in a special way, and they worship the one true God in the truest form. And as a result, Southern Baptist Evangelical Christians could have their prayers answered at a very high precision rate, and they could perform miracles or have miracles be demonstrated on demand. That actually would be very impressive. Okay, that would actually be pretty cool. Now, that still wouldn't not necessarily prove there is a God, but that would prove at least that prayers were effective, or that something they're doing is effective, and that may begin to give credence and credibility to the eventual claims that they want to make. Right? It's still not enough to directly correlate. For instance, let's say miracles could happen. That's not enough to necessarily prove that there is a God. That may prove something that they're doing is effective. Let's imagine, for instance, you have two sets of people get stuck in a cave. One set is a Christian, and another set are atheists. And the Christians, while in the cave, spend their entire time praying and asking God for salvation, while the atheists, maybe they don't. Maybe they spend their entire time trying to figure out how to get out. And let's say, for the sake of conversation, let's say the atheists end up dying while the Christians remained alive long enough to get rescued. That would be an example of, oh, there's something here. Now, Christians in that particular case would be, or whatever religion they belong to, people might be tempted to say, oh, there you go. This is now evidence that you're asking for, the proof that prayer works and God performs miracles. But not necessarily. And this is where I say, even in a situation which you could demonstrate that prayer produced a positive outcome, this still would not necessarily mean that that God is real or that miracles exist. For instance, it could be the fact that the Christians were their act of praying put them into more of a meditative, contemplative state, which allowed them to have better, more shallower breathing, which helped distribute oxygen better in their lungs. And so then you might be able to make a case then that, first of all, that would be pretty cool to find that out. And then what we would do is we'd have to find out, well, what is the actual mechanism here that's causing these results to happen? And we may find out, oh, look, meditation will help you in a case that you are trapped in a cave and you need to preserve oxygen. So, but this is the problem we have with prayers, answers to prayers, and quote unquote miracles. As soon as you want to put them to the test, then arguments like, oh, well, you shouldn't test God, these types of things come into play. And so someone like myself, fairly will say, well, why would you use that as a reason if you're not prepared to let that reason actually stand its own 2 feet and be tested? But this brings us to a bigger problem when it comes to miracles and answers to prayer. Okay. Or let's just say miracles, because that's what we're really talking about here. This idea of God still working in miraculous ways. This is the biggest problem. And I address this in one of my other videos about miracles, is that miracles seems to be a term that just is not able to be defined. I mean, if you ask 10 people what they'd call what they define as a miracle, you're probably going to get 10 different unique results. And there doesn't seem to be any real agreement amongst anyone as to what a miracle is. Usually when you actually talk to somebody about what a miracle is, to define it, usually after, as you get into that conversation with anybody, you all pretty much always ends up to being some sort of event that occurs that that breaks the laws of nature, or works or is basically unnatural, and an event or something that occurs that is not of natural course of events, or that exists outside of the natural, which we call the supernatural, something that breaks the laws of nature. Okay. Well, the problem we get at this is, that's not necessarily what everybody says. Most people, when you actually talk to them, when they will say as a miracle, typically might just be something that would be like as mundane as something that's just not typical to happen. So when you actually press people on what a miracle is, a lot of times they'll actually come to this place where they'll be like, well, a miracle is just something that's unlikely to happen. Okay. So, and which basically means that anybody can basically make up any definition of what a miracle is. And a miracle is, the phrase miracle is pretty much subjective to the person you're talking to. A miracle could be whatever you want it to be, right? I mean, if we're just going to define miracle as something that's unlikely to happen, well, then by definition, everything is a miracle, right? Because my very existence, me being here at this particular moment, with all the things that had to happen in history for me to be here in this particular situation, that's very unlikely to have occurred. And if we just say a miracle is something that's unlikely, well, then you have effectively turned everything into a miracle, which is what you end up getting to. If there's only one or two scenarios. Either one, miracles must mean something that's unnatural, that breaks the laws of nature, or miracles must be just something that's unlikely to happen. Well, like I said, the latter one, the something that's just unlikely to happen, that's not a very good definition of miracles. Because if you go with that definition, then everything is considered a miracle. And if everything is considered a miracle, which is supposed to be special, then nothing is not special. Nothing is normal, right? Everything would be considered a miracle, and thereby nothing would be a miracle, right? If everything is special and everything is unique and everything is unlikely, and that's what we're calling miracle, then by that definition, everything is a miracle, and thereby nothing can be a miracle. You reduce miracles to pretty much actually to everything, right? So that's why, to me, the only real definition of miracle will be something that breaks the natural laws of nature. Now, here's the problem with using this definition. If we say a miracle is something that truly, not even just perceptually, but actually truly breaks all the laws of nature, we run into a problem. And that problem is the limitations of our own knowledge. Okay, so because we don't know everything, how would you ever know if something truly broke the laws of nature, or if it just appeared to you to break the laws of nature? What I mean is this: you can walk up and down pretty much any street in major city in the United States, and you'll run across a street magician. And these street magicians will be able to perform tricks in front of you that seem to defy the laws of nature. They seem to be sometimes you see some of these magic tricks, and you're like, even a person with modern scientific understanding of how the world works, and even knowing in your head that some type of trick, you can see things sometimes will just make you feel like you just witnessed the laws of nature being violated. But have you actually seen that? There's a famous saying, I heard it from Christopher Hitchens first, and it goes something like this: if you believe you have witnessed the laws of nature being violated, you must ask yourself a very important question. And that question is, what is more likely? That the laws of nature have miraculously been broken in my favor, or that I am under some type of misapprehension? And here's the thing, guys. Because we don't know everything, because we're always going to see the world through our subjective experience, we must accept the fact that we don't know everything, and that the answer to the question that we have, the answer to this thing that we see or we perceive as a miracle or a true act of magic, we must always in our head, as a reasonable and rational person, accept the fact that there are things that we simply don't know, right? So even if we see a very convincing magic trick, you don't see us all run around here convinced that magic is real. No, we'll see something like that and we'll go about our day and we'll go about our lives as if, obviously in our head, we know that there must be a logical explanation for what we just saw. And that is because that's the way it should be, guys. If you see something that appears to break the laws of nature, simply declaring it being a miracle or answer to prayer is not actually legitimate, right? Because in order to arrive at the conclusion that a miracle has occurred, a breach in the laws of nature itself, in order to arrive at that conclusion, you must first rule out every possible answer. Now, obviously, we all have a set of answers that we are aware of, right? We all have, like, let's say you saw something that you believe to be a miracle or something like that, that broke the laws of nature. We all have a set of potential answers that seem to make sense based upon our knowledge. Like, oh, okay, I can rule out this, this, and this, and this, right? And we're all pretty much in synchronicity with this. So all of us do the same process. But people who use magical thinking are inclined, once they've ruled out, let's say, the top 4 explanations that they can imagine, people who are magical thinkers tend to want to now insert the final answer, which is, aha, this is a miracle, right? This is something that was miraculous. The problem is you can't ever do that, can you? Because you must always keep in mind that there are possible answers that may exist that you're simply unaware of at that moment. And because there is always going to be a set of answers that may exist that you're not aware of, you'll never be able to rule those out to get to the point where a miraculous answer is the solution. But it gets even worse than that, because let's imagine, for the sake of conversation, that you could rule out all those. Let's imagine you had infinite knowledge and you can rule out every possible explanation. Well, here's where the problem comes in next. If we are to accept the idea that the supernatural exists, that miracles do exist, in fact exist, and the laws of nature can be violated, okay, under not random conditions, just about under any condition, well, then we have a major problem, don't we? If the laws of logic in nature are not constant, then we can't really know anything, can we? We can't actually know if it was a miracle or not, because in order to arrive at the conclusion that it must have been a miracle, the laws of nature must have consistency. But if we are approaching our answer to a question with the idea that the laws of nature can in fact be violated. Well, how are we arriving at that conclusion if the laws of nature can be violated? See, this is where we get into I think it's called a redundum absurdum, where we put ourselves into a position that we can't get out of, which is, if you start with the assumption that laws of nature can be violated and aren't consistent, are not 100% consistent, then you can never have a conclusion, because without logic, without the rules of logic, without the laws of nature being consistent, well, then anything could happen, right? And once again, we put ourselves in this awkward situation where everything is essentially magical, where nothing has to follow a logical pattern. So, like I said, the real problem here is that you can never get through, because none of us have absolute knowledge of everything. All of us are going to come from a subjective experience, no matter, even if you connect your brain to the computer systems globally and have all knowledge, you are still going to be in an awkward situation that you still have a subjective experience of the world. And because you have a subjective experience, you're never going to have perfect knowledge. Like, if I hold my fist up right now, what number is written on the back of my hand? Well, if I don't show you that, if I don't demonstrate what the number is in the back of my hand, you can never know that, even if you had all quote unquote knowledge. And if you're connected to the internet and all this kind of stuff, and your brain was hooked to supercomputers and you could search Google anytime, that's not going to tell you what number is written on the back of my hand. Okay. You would have to gain additional, an additional vantage point or viewpoint in order to do that. But because you're always locked into your subjective experience, you're never going to have perfect knowledge. Right. And that is the same problem that we have with the claims of miracles. You're never going to have perfect knowledge. You're never going to have all knowledge, because of that, because you're always stuck in your subjective experience, you're always going to be limited to a certain number of facts or ideas that you can actually use to solve problems with or answer questions with. And because of that, you're never going to be able to exhaust all possible answers to arrive at the conclusion. So sometimes when we don't understand how things work, the best thing to do is say, I don't know how that works. I don't know. Right? But here's the problem, and this is the arrogance that comes with religious and magical thinking. Religious and magical thinking comes to the table draped in a false robe of humbleness and humility, but really it's disguise. It's really what it is it's disguised arrogance. Religion and religious thinking creates an answer to a question without actually having to show the answer to be true. I like what Aaron Ross says. He says, if you can't show it, you don't know it. Right? But the problem with the religious magical thinking is that the answer is presented as fact when in fact the answer is not known. So this is why people like myself are quick to point to the fact that whatever you're about to say when it comes to miracles seems to be random chance, and it seems to be coincidence, because it's exactly the same. And in fact, there have been dozens and dozens of studies, independent studies, have been done on this topic to actually prove what I'm saying to be true. There was actually a study done by, I believe it was, who did the study? It was cardiac patients study prayer. So this is the study. Let's see here. Okay, so this is a study I've heard about multiple times. Prayers don't help heart surgery patients. Some fare worse when prayed for. This is from Harvard University, dated 2006. And I believe this is several thousand people, the 1,800 people who underwent coronary bypass surgery at 6 different hospitals supported the latter research. This is a study to try to prove and even to measure the effect of prayers. So, yeah, many, if not most people, believe that prayer will help you through a medical crisis, such as heart bypass surgery. If a large group of people outside yourself, your family, and your friends joined in intercessory prayer, that should even be even more helpful. So such reasoning goes. Well, sorry to say this, guys, but what they found out is that not only was there no difference in the outcomes of people who were prayed for versus weren't prayed for, but it seems that the people who were getting prayed for, they actually fared kind of worse. So, and they say that maybe because the people being prayed for had kind of like a pressure on them to get better because they knew they were being very prayed for. So, yeah, no, that was a very in-depth answer to this little part. But yeah, whatever you're about to say about prayer and miracles, guys, it seems a lot like coincidence to me. If you could show that you have like in greater than coincidence rate of success of your answered prayers or miracles happening, that would be something to investigate. But as I've already shown you, even if you could do that, you still cannot there's a gap that you can never cross to get to miracles. And I'm just going to actually show you see if I can do this in an efficient way. Yeah, let's try this out. Let's see if I can do this. So this is going to be a question, okay? Question or observation. So let's start with the observation as an example. Let's just go right for it. Let's go for the kill shot here. No pun intended. Let's look at the observation, the claim. The claim is, or an observation. Let's look at the observation supposedly of what the Bible says. The Bible claims that Jesus was raised to heaven from death after 3 days. Okay. And let's look at the Christians want to draw a direct line to what is observed to this being the only answer that works for Christians is a miracle occurred. Okay. And Jesus did raise from the grave and ascend to heaven. Okay, so the question here is and the Christians want to draw this line directly here, like a bridge, and to say, aha, see this. Obviously, somebody said they saw this, and because somebody said they saw this, that is evidence that a miracle occurred. That is the miracle. But not so fast, guys. Not so fast. Because before you can get there, you have to accept the fact that there are possible natural explanations for this. One could be hallucinations. Another might be, okay, and let's say group hallucinations could play a part in this, okay? Some people may dispute that and say, oh, it's impossible for have group hallucinations. And let's imagine if you can get past group hallucinations. Then there's another possible answer. Oh, wait a minute. What about if it was completely made up? What if the whole story was a complete lie? Okay, let's say somebody could get past that and say, okay, I can show you that it wasn't a lie. I can show you this and that and the other thing. Let's say, let's put up another answer. Maybe it was some type of magic trick. Maybe someone's doing a magic trick and some people believed it and it looked real. And let's say some people could explain that away as well. They could say, oh no, like it's impossible. This is what apologists do, guys. They're going to constantly try to be like, okay, well, it can't be this because of this reason or whatever. But there's another option. What if it's all of these combined? What if there was a combination of all of this, right? Well, and we can go on with all kinds of explanations for this bridge, right? And apologists can continue to try to obfuscate and try to diminish each one of these options. But the truth is, we might not ever know. It might be one of these things or a combination of all these things, right? So, but apologists and religious people, this is where they get messed up. They want to cross out, they want to check off all these things and say, oh, it can't be this. Actually, hold on. Christians want to come along and say, oh, look, I proved that this can't be the case, which I don't know how you can prove that can't be the case. I proved that this is not the case. It's no way to lie. I proved there wasn't magic, whatever it is. They might go on a whole list and they'll say, aha, see, now that I've explained all of these away and showed you there can't be any of those, which I don't know how you would do such a thing. Then they want to come in and they say, this is at the moment they want to say, so it must be a miracle. We've built a bridge. We've gotten rid of all of these things. And now we've connected the dots. It must be a miracle, but not so fast, guys. And this is what I was talking about earlier. That's not exactly correct. You have one more hurdle you have to get across to build that bridge and make that connection. And that is this. This is what I referred to earlier. There's one more very tricky answer that this could be, and that is this. A possible an explanation to which I am currently unaware. Because like I said earlier, if we accept the fact that we don't know everything in our perspective of life is always going to be subjected to our personal experience, we must accept the fact that there are going to be explanations here that that we just don't have, we've never even heard of, we've never even considered, that we may, because of our limitations of scientific understanding, there may be things here that we just will never even have an idea about. We'll live our entire lives and never even hear a potential explanation. But someone 1,000 years from now may come up with a really great explanation for this, and we may not have the idea. Okay, so the problem here, guys, is this gap. This right here means you'll never be able to connect this supposed observation to the conclusion that a miracle occurred. Never. You'll never be able to cross this gap. It will always be there because you'll never be able to rule out this as, you'll never be able to rule this out as an explanation. This will always be a more likely explanation than a miracle has occurred. Okay, until you have perfect knowledge, you have all knowledge, you'll never be able to cross that gap. And because of that, a miracle occurring will never be the answer. Don't believe me? You can run this on probabilities as well. This is kind of interesting. So let's talk about prior probabilities. Okay, so we could actually assign values here. We could come up with values. Not that I'm going to do that right now, but I'm saying, let's look at hallucinations. Do hallucinations occur? Do we know that hallucinations can occur? Yes, hallucinations can occur. Okay, that's facts. We know that can happen, right? So we could actually, if we wanted to, go through and create a statistical probability of people having hallucinations related to religious experience. And hello, what do you see around you? You see thousands of different religions. Everybody believing their religion is 100% correct, which means by definition, most people are experiencing some type of delusion. And remember, delusion here isn't used as a personal attack on anybody. What we mean is A delusion is just an experience of something that's not 100% accurate. We know as a matter of fact that our brains have blind spots that our brains create images for to fill in the blanks. We know this is the case. We know that we're all experiencing some type of hallucination. So are hallucinations possible? Yes, they are possible. What about do people lie? Do we know that people lie? Yes, people lie all the time for all kinds of different reasons. So that's still not that is an option. What about magic tricks? Do people perform tricks to trick people? Yes, this happens all the time. Okay. And are there possible explanations about things that we're not fully aware of? Yes. Okay. So we can actually build probability sets on all of this. We can come up with rational numbers. Here's the problem with miracles, guys. What is the prior probability of a miracle? I'm going to type it for you. Say it with me. 0. Miracles have a 0 prior probability of occurring. Why? As I mentioned earlier, we've already ruled out the idea. And by the way, thank you, Algaron. I'm going to get to that question about ties in a moment. Thank you so much for that question. The prior probability of miracles must be 0, right? Remember our conversation I had earlier. There's a couple different ways you can refer to miracles. Most people refer to miracles as just something that's very unlikely, but I've already shown you why that's not a very good definition, because if we just say miracles are things that don't happen very often, then by definition, everything is a miracle. And if everything is a miracle, then nothing can be non-miraculous, which means miracles would just be ordinary. So miracle must mean something more than just unlikely to happen. Miracles must mean things that break the laws of nature. Now, have we ever shown that the laws of nature have been violated? No, we haven't. We have witnessed things that appeared to break the laws of nature, only to find that they don't break the laws of nature. An uneducated person, like maybe an Indian tribe member of an uncontacted Indian tribe, may be tempted to look up at an airplane flying and say to themselves, look, that object is breaking the laws of nature. But the truth to be told is, when we actually learn about how planes work, we learn that they're actually utilizing the laws of nature to do this, even though they appear to break the laws of nature. There is a famous saying that says, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Okay, so the reason why I say this is because we have no instances in which the laws of nature have in fact been violated. If we ever feel like we have witnessed that, what do we ask ourselves? Remember the question I asked earlier. If I believe that the laws of nature have been violated, I must ask myself a question. What is more likely? That the laws of nature have coincidentally been violated in my favor, or that I am under some type of misapprehension? And remember, going back to the chart, what are the chances that have we ever witnessed anything the laws of nature be violated? No. We may cross through a bunch of potential answers. We may somehow get to those answers, which I don't know how you would get through those answers 100%, but we may be able to cross some answers out. But we're always going to have this pesky problem, which is the limitations of our experiences, because as the subjective experience, which means there may be an explanation to which I am currently unaware. This is why we don't start worshiping magicians just because they perform street magic, right? In our heads, as logical, reasonable people, we accept the fact that there is probably an explanation we're just not yet aware of. So what is the prior probabilities of miracles? It must be 0. Because as soon as a miracle happens, it now becomes part of the subset of natural phenomena. Even if a miracle could happen, even if Jesus could walk on water, or even if Jesus could turn water into wine, what happens? Science pulls that data in and says, actually, it is possible to turn water into wine or walk on water or whatever the particular miracle claim is. And now that actually gets included now into the natural phenomenon that can be studied and quantified, and it no longer is a miracle. So there's a catch-22 for religious people, magical thinking people. the catch-22 is, even if you could prove that a miracle occurred, which you can't, which as I've shown you, there's certainly no way to cross this final point. But even if somehow you were able to cross this out, which the only way you would be able to do that is if you had perfect knowledge. Even if you could somehow cross this bridge and get here to a miracle occurred, you got a problem. It's no longer a miracle. Now, this answer just simply gets moved over here to being a brand new potential answer of natural experiences. Ironically, the proof and existence of a miracle would actually disprove miracles. It would just become part of the natural phenomenon. Scientists would have, let's say we're possible to turn water into wine magically by simply touching it. Scientists would now have to account for that in their scientific understanding. They would say something like, okay, we know as a matter of fact that water can be turned to wine by a supernatural touch, and that would become part of the natural explanation and now part of potential answers for the future moving forward. So if let's say scientists could prove that Jesus turned water into wine. Moving forward, after we prove that, now anytime wine shows up, let's say your kids are at school or let's say you're driving a car and you get pulled over and the police officer looks at your cup and he says, hey, there's wine in the cup holder. I'm going to charge you with carrying open container while driving. Then from that point on, if it could be actually shown that water could be turned to wine, that could be used in a court of law. You could say, look, officer, it was water earlier. Now it's wine. That's just because we know that sometimes that happens. But you see, that's not the way it works. We know that water doesn't turn to wine. We know there's no prior probability of it. So it's not included in the subset of potential answers. Okay. So this is why this was a huge diatribe onto why we are going to dismiss your claims. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I just got a question in the live feed. It says, what's your view on tithes? I'm not sure what that view would, obviously I don't go to church. I don't tithe. When I was a Christian, I did not believe in the Old Testament version of tithes. I taught like love offerings or those types of things. I didn't believe in compulsory giving. As an evangelical Christian, which I was, I believed that we were saved through grace, not of works, and that we, anything we do should be out of basically an attitude of gratitude for Jesus Christ and what he did for us on the cross, not out of any kind of obligation. So I feel like the tithe was a obligatory thing that was an Old Testament teaching, which is hilarious. Because if you believe that that the atonement of Jesus Christ was not only for moving forward in history, but also retroactive to older people, then technically the law of grace or salvation by grace was actually the method that people were supposedly saved through, actually, ironically, even in the Old Testament, which would have called into question the whole need for animal sacrifice in the first place. Why have animal sacrifice if the true method of your salvation was the retroactive atonement of Jesus Christ on the cross? That really, when I actually thought about it, I was like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. If we're saved by grace, if all people have been actually saved by grace, then the whole sacrifice animal thing was really pointless. Honestly, it really was. And so was tithes and all this other kind of stuff. So, which calls into a lot of questions, a lot of things in the Bible. So, yeah. Anyways, that's my video for today. I hope you guys liked it. Just wanted to jump on here, answer some of those questions. I do want to say here, somebody else says here, I want to end on this one because this one I just got today, I thought was very telling. This person, Joan, says, you need to turn back to God before your life is over. And this is, to me, one of the saddest kind of statements. To me, this is just a complete admission and just giving up on actually making a case. This is basically a veiled threat is what this is. It's kind of like the old mobsters used to say, hey, nice shop here you got here. Be a real shame if somebody were to come through and mess it up. And I feel like that this is what this represents for me. This idea that, instead of actually engaging me in conversation, this is just a veiled threat. This person says life does go on after we die. Okay, I understand you believe that, but that has yet to be demonstrated. Once again, I go back to that previous example. If you can't show it, you don't know it. Our soul lives on and God takes it to heaven. We need to walk by faith, not sight, and spiritual language, speak in tongues. La la. He says, can you insult God, turn your back on God? I would not want your soul to go to hell when you die. Okay, but is that true? I mean, think about this. And I've heard the saying I heard before was was really good, and it was basically like, you know, I don't believe Christians are going to go to heaven or at least nothing that resembles you is going to go to heaven. I mean, think about this. How can you be in heaven while you know that people are burning in hell forever? How can you be in a place of complete eternal bliss and happiness if you know that your loved ones and your friends and people like myself are, as you quote, burning forever? Even if you take out the idea of burning forever, if you just call eternal death, which is what some religions say to get out of the idea of a torturous hell, that's still messed up. Think about this. You're going to be, let's say you're a Christian, devout Christian, and you go to quote unquote heaven, and you're up there. You're supposed to be an eternity without pain and suffering. There should be no sadness, right? This is the whole idea of heaven. But yet, that your loved one, maybe your husband, your wife, your child, your grandparent, your parent, or some other loved one, you'll remember them supposedly, and you'll know that they're either in hell or eternally dead. How can you experience like pure joy and bliss in those circumstances? I would argue, if any of you out there are decent people right now, and you genuinely, as this person does, if you genuinely feel like you don't want somebody to go to hell, right, or die, I would challenge you to ask yourself, your future self, say, wait a minute, how is it I can be in heaven and be eternally blissful knowing that my loved ones are suffering or have suffered? I would argue that if any part of you does go to heaven, it won't be who you really are. It would be some shell of yourself. So I would just take that into consideration. Please, the veiled threats and all those kinds of things don't really motivate. It would be better to have conversations about what we're talking about, and just kind of being like, hey, nice soul there. Be ashamed if somebody were to send it to hell. That's not really a good argument or a good way to have a conversation with somebody. So with that said, I want to thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this